Major funding for these programs has been provided by grants from Capital One Bank and Perfect Building Maintenance, Murray Hill Properties, SJP Properties, Greenberg Traurig, New York Community Bank, Bank of America. Additional funding for these programs has been provided by grants from Akron Gold Brothers, LLC, C.B. Richard Ellis, City Investment Fund, Cushman & Wakefield, Eastern Consolidated, XL Realty Advisors, LP, Essex Capital Partners, First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, GVA Williams, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Helmsley Spear, Herbert J. Sims and Company, Herrick Feinstein, LLP, Jackson Development Group, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, John Katsimatidis, Kilroy Metal Products, Marcus and Millichap, Massey Knackle Realty Services, M&T Bank, Madison Realty Capital, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Muss Development, PALIN Enterprises, Rosenthal & Rosenthal, Signature Bank, Sheldrake Organization, Sterling & Sterling, Stephen Napolitano, Stonehenge Partners, Studley, the Moynihan Organization.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller. You know, there was a movie in 1996. The movie was called Jerry Maguire. Jerry Maguire was the sports agent, and Jerry Maguire had an agent, and one of his clients is this athlete. This athlete said to him, "You know, Jerry, stop this. All I want to know is I want you to show me the money. I want you to show me." Oh, show me the money. So I'm sitting with 4 bankers today, and I want these 4 bankers who are continuing to lend to, oh, show me that money. Mr. Sam Jarusa is one of them. He is the regional president of M&T Bank. Stanley Karp, the chief credit officer and executive vice president at Marathon Bank. George Klett, Executive Vice President and Head of Real Estate Lending at Signature Bank. And last but not least, the Senior Executive Vice President and Chief Credit Officer at New York Community Bank, Jim Carpenter. So, oh, show me the money. You lent out how much money in 2008?
2008 will close just about $5 billion.
$5 billion? Yeah. That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. I mean, it's been going out at, I think, a much more reasonable pace than we had in the past in terms of, there's less competition out there, and there's more opportunity to sift through things.
Wait a second. I'm sitting here. You did $5 billion. How much did you do, George?
About $1.5 billion.
So that's $6.5 billion, Stanley?
Well,
I know you're small.
Our total loan portfolio is, our CRE loan portfolio is less than $600 million. So it pales by comparison, but we serve a local community. And
I'm just trying to, Stanley, all I'm saying is, and you know, M&T Bank put out about $1.5 billion, right? $1.2 billion. So $1 billion, let's say another $100 billion, $1.3 billion, 2.8. Hey, you guys close to $8 billion last year. Everybody tells me there's no money. So what did you lend on? What did you lend on? What do you like? What do you dislike? Jim?
I think we're still sticking to the same format. You know, the last time you had me here, I talked about multifamily finance, rent-regulated, rent-stabilized product, and that's probably 3/4 of what we do. It's 3/4 of what's in portfolio, and you know, if you take a look at how we've kind of changed our platform over the last 6-8 months, we've really started to concentrate even more on multifamily and less in CRE.
What about you, George?
It's primarily multi-tenanted income-producing property in New York City area, existing cash flow. Primarily multifamily because that's the easiest and safest investment. Retail and office, I've always liked, but in the last couple of months, because of the announcements of all these layoffs and unemployment, very, very cautiously. We've pulled back on our loan to values and debt service coverage to be more conservative about it. But if it's with a good client, a client that we feel very comfortable with, that we've known for many, many years, we try to make the deal.
What about you, Stanley?
Pretty much the same. We're, as I said, a community bank. We're relationship-oriented. We serve the communities that we have our branches in throughout Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, Bergen County, and Nassau. We do the type of lending that is somewhat core lending, which is multifamily. We do some mixed use, some small commercial. And we, again, want to take care of our customers who have been good to us over the years. The money goes both ways. Banks depend on, as you know, the lifeblood of banking is deposits. People that keep deposits with us are, very valued customers. And
so if I had a couple $1 million with you,
yard.
I'd have a better situation to get a loan.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And you, Sam?
We've done the same thing. As portfolio lenders, the first thing you're looking at is what's materially important to a loan is not just the asset and how it cash flows, but also who's behind it. So over 2008, we've added to the mix that my colleagues here have just mentioned. We have also done some construction lending. That is a bit a little less of a particular asset that we're looking for at this point, but in 2008 we did do some construction lending.
We started off the year with construction lending too, and then pulled back the last few months.
So I was saying prior to the show, the biggest problem that we have is the question of value. Nobody knows really what value is. The appraisers who were here 2 weeks ago, they question what the value is. How do you make it? It's such, it's like it's science. I mean, you have to. It's a judgment call. But how do you make determination? You just had a board meeting today. We're in 2009 when the show is airing. What kind of items do you really want to do now? And how do you? Everybody's scared because condo sales are slow. Rentals are down, also on residential rentals for market rate apartments, which we were talking about before. How do you make a determination of what values and where you're going to go in 2009?
I think as a portfolio lender, and I won't speak for the rest of the group, but I know that that the way we look and analyze a specific property is not so much based on what you would consider or an appraiser would consider a market value, but more of a value that we would term a liquidated value. What this particular property in a particular environment may bring, and you're always looking at the downside when you're an underwriter. So basically,
is underwriting like undertaking?
No.
I mean,
you're always cognizant of the fact that it's the future cash flow that pays the loan, not the past cash flow. So you want to be comfortable with the location, with the borrower. You want to be comfortable with the future cash flow. So you're looking at fuel and.
But we were talking prior to the show, and you have branches in Queens, and everybody loved Long Island City, not Astoria, but everybody's always loved Astoria. But all these new buildings were built in Queens and Long Island City. All these properties that we were joking before, they were built allegedly on Park Slope, which I didn't call them Park Slope. They were really Sunset Park.
Gowanus.
Or the Gowanus over here. These were areas that they were up and coming. But in today's market, if you can live in Manhattan, you're going to buy an apartment in Manhattan, or you're going to rent an apartment in Manhattan, as opposed to go to the Queens.
When you look at those fringe areas, that's where those were the first areas. Harlem, East Harlem, the fringe areas are the first ones to start see prices decline, and the numbers just came out today. Housing starts the lowest since 1959. So we've got this built-up inventory. It's going to take some time.
But you bring up East Harlem. I was at a symposium today, and they were saying that not East Harlem, just Harlem in general, sales are down by 35%, 35 to 40% in condo sales. I was on the phone with a developer who's building something called Fifth on the Park. I said, what are you going to do with the balance of the apartments? He says, I got 9 months, but I'm going to probably have to rent them. Condos aren't selling. So what happens if you have a borrower that you did a construction loan, or you did one at the beginning of the time, or any of you did? What happens? You were talking before about that on your but the one you have in Long Island City. How do you try to let that borrower survive in 2009?
I think to what Sam was saying before, when we underwrite the construction loan, we look at the downside of the deal. So, some lenders look at the rental fallback. To be competitive in the construction market, I would say over the last few years it was difficult to be competitive and just rely on a rental fallback. So you really had to look at your gross sellout, but maybe at what point could you break even? Were you comfortable per square foot on a break even? Right. So you could so it might not work on a sellout, but it could on a rental, but it could work on a very conservative sellout.
Right. Yeah. I think what you have to do, because again it's relationship lending and we keep the loans in our portfolio, is that you have to work with the developer. Things have slowed down now. The sales are a lot slower. The velocity of sales prices have come down, and a lot of developers that I know now are going to the rental mode, and you just have to work with them. You have to extend the loan. You have to work with them and get through it.
But part of the problem on changing it from a sales mode to a rental mode is that the size of a condo is not always the size of a rental. So it's really sometimes a little difficult to get that type of rent. My joke is, Avalon Bay, who builds only rentals, they know that they can build the studio for 450 square feet or a one-bedroom, be a very modest one-bedroom, for 550 square feet. A condo that you would finance, you may have, would be 800 square feet. Right. So you really, even though there's a rental concept fallback, it may not work out.
No, but even though we never really lent on sale, we lent on rental values, and so even so, today we see rental values less than what was projected a year and a half or 2 years ago. But what we've always stressed is, as you said, who is the builder, who's the developer, what is the relationship, what is the fallback, what is the liquidity and net worth of the builder. So is there the strength in a down market to carry? So what we're finding is that even though apartments are coming on the market now and the rental values are less than what we originally thought, and the debt service coverage is going to be less than what we thought once we calculate, that the builder, the developer, has the wherewithal to carry that through this downturn, and this is a downturn. This is a period. This is
that's
not
the
forever.
big difference between the early '90s and now. In the early '90s, the real estate clients then had the rap from the bankers was that they never had liquidity. If they had $1 million, it was a lot. Those same clients now, because of the last 8 or 10 years, many of them have 20, 50, $100 million. They have really deep pockets. And they learned, I think, from the '90s also that if you hang in there long enough and you don't give up the property and you can afford to carry it, you're going to stay there because you don't want to give up the property. So with the deep pockets, a lot of them are just stepping up and they're paying down the loans and they're coming out of pocket to finish projects because they have the money.
In the same question in the same vein that I was trying to bring up on values before, the real question is pricing of a debt. I mean, today the Federal Reserve reduced the Fed rate to 0.25%. I mean, the lowest probably in years or possibly history at this type of rate. So, how do you determine, what do you charge? We were talking prior to the show about one of another portfolio lender who's a Canadian portfolio lender who says, I don't care what the Fed fund rate is, I don't care what the LIBOR is, I don't care what prime is. Here's my deal. You want to borrow from me, I want 2 points for origination. I want 500 over a floor of 3. I want 8, and then I want 2 points to get out of the deal. How do you? I mean, because each one of you depend on deposits. You just brought it out. You need deposits to churn this type of business. That's where you're getting your situation. How do you determine what you should charge a borrower?
I think every bank has a base cost of funds that they're going to be dealing with, and that cost of funds is going to be affected by how much of their funding they can get from internal deposits and how much they're going actually to the window, so to speak, to borrow from the Fed. And that is going to cause a differentiation between one cost of funds. My cost of funds and Jim's cost of funds may not be the same, simply because the combination of those two things may not be different.
I'm looking, people who watch my show will probably call you up, the ones who are in the real estate business. They want to know where that money guys are going to charge. It's 2009 when we know we're at a low Fed fund rate. We know we're at this situation. Are the prices going to be as crazy as I pick on you all the time in the low and low sixes, or are we going to see six? Borrowers are going to say, Jim, you should only charge me 4. It's too cheap.
Right. As Sam was saying, we all have different deposit costs, and we all have different operating expense ratios, and so operating costs go in there as well. It's a unique opportunity to be standing when so few are. Right. Wall Street has vacated the space. Fannie seems to come in and out.
I'm in 100% agreement. There are people, which we joked before, that you cannot be a short-term interim lender because it would, the regulators would look at you. But in this situation, I think you have to take the risk reward. There aren't that many that many players out there. Some of them, many of the foreign banks who are in the business are out of the business today. Yeah. So what do you think Signature Bank will charge for a loan, let's say a 5-year multifamily loan?
Well, you said risk reward, and that's what it's all about. What happened is, in the early 90s, mid-90s, when the securitizations came in, then Fannie and Freddie, they distorted the whole risk reward. They were lending at ridiculous spreads over treasuries, and they're the ones who really started this. It has to be a certain spread over treasury, because what they wanted to do is take these loans, slice and dice them, and sell them off. So if you got a AAA tranche, that would be at a certain spread over treasuries, and the B tranche, C tranche, more than that. And they really distorted the risk reward of lending. And it came back to bite them, and that market collapsed right now. And so now we get back to more traditional lending, where it's all about deposits. I usually joke when I have a private banker with me, and we go to visit a client or a new client, and I say, banking is a very simple business. All you do is you take your money and you give it to Joe here, and then I take it and I lend it back to you at more than he's paying you. And that's what it's all about.
So what do we foresee based on the current conditions? Are we talking about, on a 5-year loan, are we talking about a low 6% rate? Are we talking interest only, or are we talking? Do we see rates going in the 5s? I
think you're starting to see us all get back to where we've tried to keep this business, and that's to a much more traditional underwriting and much more profitable pricing. I think our risk tolerances are less, and we're looking to get a wider spread. We joke, we value properties at gross rent multipliers. Now we're gross treasury multipliers on the rates. But anything times 0, it's tough to calculate a rate.
I think Mike's trying to pin us down to a specific rate, and as you can see, I don't think any of us are biting. But one of the issues that I think you need to understand about the pricing grid is that people focus in on one indice or one index, and then we look at these other indices and we say, well, rates should be dropping. But if you really go to the capital markets and you go to the window and you take a look at your 5-year money and what it's costing us to go out to the window, it's a lot different than what the Fed fund rate is. And because of this disarray in the capital markets right now, you're going to find a differentiation
Sam,
between
I agree with
banks.
you, but you know what the biggest problem is? Borrowers are still in denial of what the world has happened, because what they see is
they're waking up, though.
No, I think but George, aren't they saying 5-year treasuries are 1.30? Yeah. How could you be charging me so much?
And my answer to that is, 3 days from now it could be double that. Who knows? The market is so basic.
I think we express we're all looking for the same type, to a great extent, to the same type of loan. So we're all going to be competitive with each other. I think the borrower has to be his main concern, because we hear about credit constraint and the availability. Right. The main thing is availability. Is the bank that you're with able and willing to lend? And so between the 4 of us, there may be 0.25% at the most, 50 basis points spread. Right. So we're all in the ballpark. Then it depends on the borrower. And rate is not just a matter of picking a number out of air. It has a lot to do with, again, the location, the type of property, the relationship with the bank.
So now you bring out the next question. We all know that all 4 of you are going to continue to lend in 2009. The question is, what don't you want to lend on? Okay, I heard George saying that he doesn't see the bank, and I don't want to answer for you, really doing too much construction or any construction for 2009.
That's right.
In the foreseeable future. Sam?
Well, I don't think we're going to be lending on lots of construction unless one of our core clients comes in and is on the land for an extended period of time and has no real, very low basis in that, and is putting something up that is a rental that could work based on what we would call reasonable.
The clients themselves don't want to borrow now; they're afraid.
But that's it. And I was going to say that.
I mean, the smart borrower says, "Hey, let me sit over there." The unfortunate problem, as I said on the show the week before, developers want to be developers. They don't like sitting stagnant. They don't, right?
Well, those developers that don't have income property and cash flow, and they only know one thing to do. But I think for us to look at construction, I'm going to need to wait to see the 1 to 4 market improve, so where there's some confidence there, lending activity starts, so that when we get to the end and the product is complete, that we've got a real comfortable sense that there's going to be.
Can I bring up a category that was great in the heyday, and we were joking before, Stanley and I, about what about the hotel business? I did a panel a couple weeks ago, and Richard Bourne was probably like Dr. Doom and Gloom, which is what they call me these days, and he said that next year, in 2009, he sees a 40% reduction in revenue for hotel rooms. Now, needless to say, hotel rooms have been at record highs, but a 40% reduction still means a lot in this situation. And a lot of these inexperienced borrowers who did not get any loans from any 4 of you, but these inexperienced borrowers were building hotels in fringe neighborhoods and so on. So where do you see yourself doing any hotel financing? We've
never been a player. And it's probably the most immediate barometer for the business climate. Those leases are one night. Shortest leases.
Well, hotels is really a business. Yeah. We don't look at it as
it's an operating business.
It's a specialized type of real estate lending.
Yeah. And I've done them in the past, but very, very ultra conservatively. But I don't like doing them really.
Well, we do them in our bank, but we don't do them under the auspices of real estate. We do them, as George mentioned, it's more of a middle market type of lending that where they analyze the business and they analyze what's behind the business as well. So there's more than just the basic rent and what's going on and what that particular asset is and where it sits. There's a lot more that goes into it, and usually it's followed by personal guarantees and other collateral. So
another food chain in the real estate business is the retail business, and there have been bankruptcies this year, and there are many entities who think that there are going to be more retail bankruptcies next year. What effect is that going to have on your lending to retailers? George?
That's the part that we're very afraid of right now. Scott Shea, our chairman, his biggest fear, he thinks that the retail market in New York City, the worst of the worst is about to happen. And so we're doing some deals, but again, I looked at a deal the other day, 35-40% loan to value. Things like that, under 50%, let's say, with experienced people. But we're very concerned about that and about office because of the layoffs. I personally like neighborhood retail. The cleaners, the pizza store, the deli, and all that, because they're recession-proof. You always have to go to the grocery store or pizza or whatever you're going to do. But other retail, we're very, very cautious about it.
I mean, the big question, and we were joking about this on a number of shows, and I may have brought it up before, the credit tenant is no longer a credit tenant.
Right.
I mean, everybody thought AIG was a credit tenant, Lehman Brothers.
You have no idea.
How can you trust the rating?
Okay, you can't trust the ratings, and then you have a situation that, hey, you have a lot of pharmacies over here, you have the CVS, you have the Walgreens, and even Walgreens is getting questioned. But if people are going to do a deal, I hear, that's the only one that they want to do. I mean, with Dwayne Reed and the other situations, they're very scared.
Yeah.
Well, that's the highest credit rating, so that's probably
you can't trust the credit rating.
The point is, so you know what? It's a very interesting point. You don't ever really, none of you really look at credit ratings. How do you look at appraisals?
Very carefully.
Yeah.
My whole career, what I've always done is our loan officers, we look at the deal, we underwrite it, they do a full analysis of it, and we're really relying on our underwriting, right? Like Sam alluded to before, it's not just an appraisal of market value. You're looking at other factors involved in it. So we do that. We order the outside appraisal because you have to have it, and we look at it to make sure that we didn't miss anything, but invariably that outside market value appraisal comes in higher than our appraisal.
But you don't have an internal appraisal department.
No, but all my loan officers, they underwrite the deal.
Right, but you specifically, you're one of the few banks that you truly have an independent, you have your own appraisers.
I think we all have a chief appraiser. I don't know if you do. We have a chief appraiser, and then we have an appraisal staff. For independence, the appraisal is not ordered by the lender; it's ordered by the appraisal staff.
Yeah, under the fire regulations,
yeah.
you need to have somebody
but
other than the
But
loan
your
officer.
appraisal organization, you really, I know.
They do have considerable influence in the process. I've seen a lot of appraisals recently. If you want to just talk about trends in appraisals, where comps are, I've seen appraisals coming in with not the best comps, very stale. They don't really
less and
don't
less
match up
sales.
with-
I mean, the biggest problem is there aren't that many sales.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at CB Richard Ellis had if you omit the Maclau portfolio, they had a 93% drop off in investment sales last year. You know, if the people are really honest, most of the investment sales are completely down. A seller is not going to sell unless they must sell in today's market.
Well, I think that's also because those investment sales were typically the larger deals, and who was financing them? CMBS market. You know, they could handle the larger size transactions.
So in a quick comment, because we don't have much time, how much longer do you think this perceived credit crisis and this difficulty, you know, all of us have been through the crisis in the 90s, how much longer do you think this is going to take?
We've discussed that probably ad nauseum, but it looks like 2009 is really going to be more of the same and maybe getting worse. We don't look for recovery to sometime in 2010, and I think if you're optimistic, you're looking at maybe second, and if you're not optimistic, you're looking at third or fourth quarter.
Look, we haven't seen the depths of the unemployment crisis yet. We have another wave of ARMs that will reprice coming onto the market in 2009. The lack of confidence in government and the banks and Wall Street is.
So you're saying 2000?
So I'm going way in past 2009.
George?
Yeah, 2009 is going to be another frustrating year where we want to lend, we want to be in the business, but it's going to be very, very frustrating.
Jim?
It's going to be 2010.
I'd agree with everything that's been said. It's into 2010.
So
We'll be in the market,
as I
but
started
it's-
the show saying, oh, show me the money, you guys are showing me the money, and I know that you're going to continue to show me the money in 2009. I'd like to thank Sam Giarusa, Stanley Karp, George Klett, and last but not least, Jim Carpenter. See you next week.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Major funding for these programs has been provided by grants from Capital One Bank and Perfect Building Maintenance, Murray Hill Properties, SJP Properties, Greenberg Traurig, New York Community Bank, Bank of America. Additional funding for these programs has been provided by grants from Akron Gold Brothers, LLC, CB Richard Ellis, City Investment Fund, Cushman & Wakefield, Eastern Consolidated, XL Realty Advisors, LP, Essex Capital Partners, First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, GVA Williams, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Helmsley Spear, Herbert J. Sims & Company, Herrick Feinstein, LLP, Jackson Development Group, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, John Katzimatidis, Kilroy Metal Products, Marcus and Millichap, Massey Knackle Realty Services, M&T Bank, Madison Realty Capital, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Muss Development, PALIN Enterprises, Rosenthal & Rosenthal, Signature Bank, Sheldrake Organization, Sterling & Sterling, Stephen Napolitano, Stonehenge Partners, Studley, the Moynihan Organization.